Duke Roufus is here. Hi, Duke. How are you?
I'm great. How you doing today?
I am delighted to talk to you, Duke. I always am. Boy, you guys in Milwaukee, the heat is about to come for the summer, which I know you guys are excited about. And speaking of the heat, you guys have a fight with Nate Diaz coming around after the big win over Wonderboy Thompson. This is a great time in the career of Anthony Pettis, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an amazing time. I'm very proud of him. He had a tough streak, and he turned it around. And he's a better man the second time around doing this. I got to tell you, the neat thing about this fight is we've kept it real hush hush. I think it's been in the works about 2.5, 3 weeks. And the neat thing about it was Nate Diaz's people talked to our people to put this thing together. So that's when we knew that it was going to be a real fight. That when they came reaching out to us, there's been bad blood between the two guys for years, so it's going to be a barn burner.
Now, okay, so let's back up here a step. So this fight kind of got made independent of the typical UFC matchmaker method?
Yes, some of the higher level managers we've been communicating back and forth. Even when there was word of Anthony fighting Connor, our people were in touch with Audie and Connor's people, and they were on board with it. It's just Connor really wants to fight Khabib. I think a lot of the managers are being proactive, professional. We're all in this together. At the end of the day, we're going to fight. But the first thing we got to do is work together as business people. We're in the prize fighting business, and we got to make fights with prizes.
Okay. Tell me why you like this fight for Anthony. Sell it to me.
Well, first of all, we like Wonder Boy. If he could knock out a guy like Wonder Boy, Anthony doesn't like Nate. Nate doesn't like him. I get along fine with Nate. I'm not his bestie, but at the same time, I don't fight the man. I respect the Diaz brothers, and I respect their stance. That being said, their stance is easy to fight when I say their mentality. They're not going to like you. People that try and intimidate and get in Anthony's face, bring him up for the challenge. When Donald Cerrone fought, Donald had a little trash talk before the fight. Michael Chiesa recently. So people like that actually motivate Anthony to, it's kind of like the scene in Scarface. Oh, for a green card, I'll kill him. But oh, he's a communist. I'm gonna carve him up real nice. That's the mentality he has when he doesn't like guys. So that's why I'm looking forward to this one.
How different is this fight by virtue of being at 170 versus 155 pounds?
Well, I think it's great for both guys. I mean, I'm being a little goofy with my metaphors, etc. But Nate Diaz is a beast, and he's going to be a beast at 170. But I found Anthony's really strong. One thing I know from being a coach in this sport, I see these guys have incredible performances in the gym at their normal weight. And that's what I'm trying to get a lot of my guys to dial into, being at the weight that they perform the best at in the gym. So that being said, going to be a great fight. Stylistically, Nate is an incredible boxer, tough as nails, resilient, got a heart of a champion, and incredible jiu-jitsu. I just think Anthony brings more tools to the fight. Ironically, a lot of people don't realize one of my longtime students, his name is Derek Ewan. He was the coach of Josh Thompson, who helped manufacture that win over Nate Diaz. So that goes back to old school Roufus game plan.
So what was the key for Josh Thompson to beat Nate Diaz?
The up-down game, getting him worrying about the low kicks, going high, going to the body, etc. Thing is, kicking defense is one of those things you just don't pick up in a training camp. And that's what we just saw this weekend, 2 fights that were strongly affected by the low kick. Anderson Silva, and then as well, another fight was, Michael Venom Page got off balance with a low kick and then knocked out by Lima. That's why I was so confident coming into the Wonder Boy fight. You don't always see the effects right away of the low kick, but they throw incredible fighters. Timing's off. People who have the ability to kick all targets are very hard to beat. And that's something that Anthony has embraced recently, especially when we don't fight wrestlers. It's a lot easier to kick more. It becomes truly a kickboxing fight. We got a Glory or Rotterdam Stadium fight ahead of us.
So, what is the biggest challenge when you're fighting Nate Diaz? What do you have to really take seriously?
He's great, man. But we didn't get in this to beat bumps. It's like our last fight, Anthony beat someone who'd never been knocked out before and knocked him out, and one thing is just the mentality. Nate, funny story, Joe Silva told me years ago about when Nate fought Clay Guida. He kept saying 209 bitch the whole time during the fight. He comes back to the corner and asks his coach, "What's 209?" I don't, he's in your face. So I'm gonna be a crazy coach. I'm gonna be talking a lot of mess in training to Anthony. That's some of the psychological tricks my brothers and I used to do growing up. I'm a method coach. When we're fighting, when he's fighting one of the guys I'm fighting, I become that guy on the pads. I become that guy in training, so that you get used to that mentality. You got trash talking up in your face, howling and scowling the best way they can from the 209. So I'm gonna, integrate and get into that mindset. I'm gonna be a homie for a while.
That is a hilarious story. That's so funny. All right, so let me play some devil's advocate positions here if I can. Certainly, Anthony is not Conor McGregor, but I guess what I'm asking is, how does Anthony get around the big reach of somebody like Nate? Because I even talked to Anthony after his win over Wonderboy, and while it went his way, one thing he said was, "Man, the reach was a real problem. The distance was a real problem." Now, Nate is not in and out like that, but he obviously has, lanky arms. So, how is Anthony going to deal with that?
The only other tall guy Anthony's lost to was Tony Ferguson. You look at him versus Chiesa, you look at him versus Donald Cerrone. Anthony fights quite well with tall people. You're right, though. You're exactly right there, Luke. That's why you were on the Glory broadcast team with us. You know your X's and O's. It's the mobility of Wonder Boy that gives so much trouble with his reach. Where Nate, when someone's a little more still, you have more options, similar to the way Tyron Woodley dropped Darren Till. So another tall guy. See, one of the biggest things I can help my guys with is I was a small heavyweight, so I know how to fight tall, big people very well. That's how I lasted 20 years in the game. The other thing, I actually spar with my guys a lot, so they're used to sparring a big dude like me, working around my reach, my advantages. So that being said, I think that Wonder Boy's a special type of fighter that's very hard to beat. Nate has been beat by some good fighters, and he does what he does, and I don't see him making a lot of serious footwork changes at this stage of his career because it doesn't blend with his mentality. He wants to walk up and Stockton slap people.
I'm looking at his resume, Anthony Pettis' resume. A couple things stand out to me. Obviously, there was a bit of a dark period there from the Dos Anjos loss in 2015 through 2016. Let's start there. I'm wondering, as a coach, how concerned were you about his ability to get a rebound during that down period?
Well, I said it on Ariel on your guys' show when Ariel was on it that
Yeah.
if he won a one against Charles Oliveira, I was going to quit. That's how desperate I was, because it was hard. It wasn't that he was lazy. It wasn't that um, he wasn't working hard. Just didn't have his mojo. The other thing I think that Anthony, he had such a meteoric rise in the sport. I don't think he handled a lot of the things that. He never really dealt with the death of his father because I went through the same situation. Ironically, I found my sister dead, and at the same type of age as him, I had a very dark area of my career because I think beginning of your career when you catapult from bad experiences, you got the angst, you got the fire, you hate the world, you hate your opponent. Well, what happens? You become champion. We meet girls. We get better lives. You're not as angry as you once were. You're forced to get better. You got to win by getting better. And that's what Anthony's done. He's dug so deep, found a new passion, new motivation. It has nothing to do with all the bad things that happened to him. his motivation is all the great things that are next to him and ahead of him, and that's what I'm super happy about him, because that, sometimes, as tough as we are, we do a good job of guarding the things that we should address. Because I stayed up many a late nights thinking about all this stuff for him, relating it to my life, and he just dug deep and reinvented himself 2018 on, and it takes a special person to do that.
Also, here's another thing that stands out about Anthony Pettis' resume. Like, you'll know this better than I do, but he gets criticized for some of the losses. Okay, that happens in the sport. I don't think folks realize this is a guy who fought the best of his generation, fight in and fight out. I mean, these are just some of the names: Donald Cerrone, Benson Henderson, Gilbert Melendez, RDA, Eddie Alvarez, Edson Barboza, Charles Oliveira, Max Holloway, Jim Miller, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chiesa, Tony Ferguson, and then Wonderboy Thompson. That's the fight list in order. That is a remarkable, remarkable resume for a guy who's had, yes, some ups and some downs, but Jesus Christ, he doesn't dodge any tough fight.
Well, when you're trying to do this, it's hard to wake up and do road work and kill yourself to fight gimmies. You know, you need people to motivate you. I'm motivated as a coach because he's super motivated as a fighter. Fighting fights we're supposed to win doesn't make us work hard and do special effort. And that being said, that's his mindset. I love it. Even in, a lot of people don't realize the Tony Ferguson fight, that was a short camp. We took that. UFC needed a fight that in case Connor and Khabib got hurt, some extra 55s. We took that on a short camp. A lot of people don't realize, Anthony won't admit it because he never makes excuses, but I'll let the world know. 3 weeks before the Dustin Poirier fight, he was cut on his forehead. That's why he was bleeding so bad in the fight.
Huh.
Yeah, did Dustin hit him? Because he reopened the cut. He gets criticized as a Taekwondo pretty boy, but he's about that life. He's tougher than tough, man, and that's what I love about the kid. He don't judge a book by its cover.
So what can he gain with a win over Diaz? We know Diaz has obviously rocketed into stardom with his back and forths with Conor. He is beloved. You mentioned about that life. We know the Diazes are very much about that life. They have a cult following. So let's say Anthony gets a win in August over Nate Diaz. Where does that put him? What does it do for him?
Just more marquee fights. I think that's the stage of the career he's at right now, is super fights. I know that's an overused term, but the fights that the fans want. Anthony loves making the fans happy, lives for the fans. That's why I gave him the Showtime moniker from his first fight. It's not that he was a pretty guy with his style. When it was time to fight, he flipped the switch on. He ran out there and just whooped the guy. He loves fighting for the fans. It's there's not a lot of fighters left like that. He's a special one that way. And when his mind is right, he's in a very tough guy to beat. And right now, he's a happy fighter, which Mike Tyson says is a dangerous fighter.
If he gets this win at 170 and you're looking at his resume, I guess I'm trying to ask, like, what can we say about his achievements, right? 2 different weight classes, got a title in one of them. How as his coach, would you evaluate his body of work if he builds on the Thompson win here?
Just incredible. I mean, I'm not going to say he's Muhammad Ali, but it's Muhammad Ali like. A lot of people counted Muhammad Ali out when he fought George Foreman. We knew, no, everyone thought we were crazy to take the Wonder Boy fight. We knew that was a great setup fight for the UFC to bring Wonder Boy back, not Anthony back. I mean, I'm not saying the UFC set us up. We asked for the fight. That being said, I just know stylistically, when it comes to striking, who are the best matchups, and Nate Diaz is a wonderful matchup stylistically for Anthony. And we're at a neat stage of our career where we're starting to see some stylistic matchups that are fun for him. Nate is not a big shooter, not a big wrestler, so it's going to be on the feet a lot unless Anthony chooses it to be on the mat and he wants to take Nate down.
What are you next on the road, Coach?
We just had 2 guys at Bellator this weekend. We split 1-1, and Tyron Woodley's protege won his pro debut. He was a former IMAF bronze and silver medalist. So really good weekend. I have 5 fighters on the LFA May 31st in Minneapolis. Then we have 4 fighters on the UFC in Minneapolis: Tyron Woodley, Sergio Pettis, Jared Gordon, and Jordan Griffin. And then I go with the Funk Master, Ben Askren. We go to Vegas July 6th for International Fight Weekend. Got Brendan Allen on the Contenders July 16th. And then we go to Cali for, we're going to be in hostile territory then August 17th. So it's going to be a magical summer.
All right, well, we'll have to catch up with you as time goes on because you got a lot on your plate, but I know you're up for the challenge. Always like catching up with you, Duke. Thank you so much for your time, and I can't wait to see Anthony's fight against Nate.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
There he goes. Duke Roufus, a great, great coach and talent in the MMA space.